Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'll be showing you an easy way to make this trendy stylish gathered dress using the freehand method. If this looks like what you are interested in, then you want to keep watching this video till the end, and let's get started. These are the fabrics we'll be using for this tutorial, and I have 2 yards of black crepe here, and I also have 2.5 yards of this crepe. We are not going to be using all of this. You'll get to know how much we are going to use in the course of the video. So I'm going to be folding this into 4 because we are cutting both front and back at the same time. So I'm going to fold this carefully, and then I'm going to leave about 2 inches for zipper allowance for the back. So this is how I folded it, and like I said, it's folded into 4, and I already ruled a straight line to serve as the shoulder line. Next thing I'm going to do is to place my tape from this center front here, and I'm going to mark 7.5, which is the shoulder measurement I'm working with, divided by 2, and then I'm going to come down from the 7.5 point by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and then I'm going to mark the neck width of 3 inches, and then I'm going to connect from the neck width to the shoulder slope. After connecting, I am going to be marking the round armhole measurements I'm working with, divided by 2, which I got 7.5. I'm going to be marking that from the shoulder slope here, and then I am going to be ruling a straight line. That's, I'm going to extend the line, and this is going to serve as the chest line. And then after that, I'll go ahead to place my tape on the center front like this, and then I am going to mark 7.5 inches, which is the shoulder measurement I'm working with, divided by 2, and then I am going to connect this into the shoulder slope this way. And then after that, I'll go ahead to mark the bust point measurement I'm working with. Okay, so you can place your tape on the shoulder and mark shoulder to bust point, or you can go ahead to come down by 2 inches from the armhole line, okay, to get the bust point. So we are not going to be using this in the course of this tutorial. We don't need that. The only thing we need is shoulder line, chest line, waistline, and hip line. So I'm going to be marking the waistline now, and I'm using 17 inches. I'll go ahead to mark it, and then for the hip line here, I am using 9 inches below the waistline, 8 or 9 inches below the waistline. But for this, I am using 9 inches below the waistline, so I'm going to be marking about 26 inches. Then I will mark a straight line on the point, and then after that, I'll go ahead to mark the neck depth measurement, and for the front I'll be using 7 inches. So you can use 6 or 7 inches, it's fine. I had marked 6.5 inches and then connected to the neck width, but I later added ½ inch to it. And remember that we are cutting both front and back, so we are going to also mark the back neck depth as well here, and I'll be using 1.5 inches for the back neck depth. And then I'll also connect it to the neck width, and then I extended it into the zip allowance. For the armhole here, I'll measure what I have and divide it by 2, go in by ½ inch. Then I am going to be marking the bust measurement on this chest line here, divided by 4. Okay, the bust measurement I'm working with, divided by 4, I marked it on the chest line, and then I am going to be connecting to create my front armhole curve. After that, I'll go ahead to also create the armhole for the back as well. Next, I am going to mark the waist measurement I am working with, divided by 4 on the waistline. And then after that, I also go ahead to mark the hip measurement I am working with, divided by 4 on the hip line. And then I am going to connect the points from the hip line to the waistline and then to the chest line. Next, I marked the nipple to nipple measurement I am working with, divided by 2 on the hip line here, and I placed my tape from the center front and then marked. And then after that, on the side here from the waistline, I am going to come down by 5 inches, and then I am going to mark that. And then on the center front here, I'm going to be going up from the hip line by 4 inches, or you can mark 5 inches if you are placing your tape from the waistline. And then I'm going to connect with the curve to the center and then also with a curve to the side. After connecting the center curve, I'll go ahead to also connect to the side, and I want the side to be higher than the center curve, so I'm going to be going up by 1 inch from the 5-inch point that I marked. That means if you are marking from your waistline, you will mark 4 inches from your waistline, and then the center front 5 inches from your waistline. Okay, and then after that I went ahead to add my sewing allowance, and then I am also going to connect the points of the sewing allowance, and then we are going to be cutting this out. So we are going to start by cutting the back first before we cut the front. Watch carefully to see how I am going to be cutting this out. For the back, you need to be mindful of the armhole and then the neckline as well, and then the zip allowance. We are going to be altering that. We are going to make sure that we go in on the waistline on the zip allowance by about ½ inch, so that the zipper does not bulge. So if you are fixing your zipper, make sure you follow that slant. So I'm going to be slanting it into the top part of this back piece and then also into the lower part of the back piece, and then I extended my center front line to meet the zipper allowance point, and then I am going to cut out. So after carefully cutting the back piece, we are going to be cutting the neckline for the front and also the armhole curve for the front. If you have any questions, do not forget to drop your questions in the comments, as I'll be replying to all your questions. And also, if you have not liked this video, what are you waiting for? Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and also share this video. And also do not forget to turn on notification bell to get notified each time I post a new video. So after cutting, I went ahead to notch the zip allowance for the back so that I will know where the zipper is going to pass through. The next thing we are going to be cutting now is the sleeve, and I have my piece here folded in 4, and then I'll go ahead to measure the width. I have about 13 inches here, and then I came down from the top part by 5 inches, but I went ahead to trim this because it's not equal. Then I marked the sleeve length I am working with, and I am working with the sleeve length of 26 inches because this dress has a long sleeve. And then I came down by 5 inches from the top this way, and then I ruled a straight line, and then I went ahead to mark the round armhole measurement I am working with divided by 2, which is 7.5 on this point here, and then I added the sewing allowance for the piece. I added 1.5 inches because it's the same 1.5 inches I added for the main dress, and then I went ahead to connect a slant line to meet the first point that I marked, and then I divided what I have on the line by 2, and then I went up by ½ inch and then created a curve to meet the tip, and then went below the line as well by ½ inch and then created a curve as well. I didn't know that my camera did not capture the other part of the sleeve, but I believe you should understand by the explanation. So I connected from the lower part all the way to the top part, and then I am going to cut this out. Like I said before, if you have questions, please do not forget to drop your questions. So after cutting the sleeve, I'm going to set it aside, and then I am going to be measuring what I have from the top of this front piece here all the way down to this front center front opening. So I have about 22 inches here, and then I am going to be using the side instead because the side is higher, so which is about 21 inches thereabout. That's going to determine the length of this dress. So I'm going to be placing 21 inches outside this, and then I am going to mark the length I want the dress to be, and then I am going to cut out. So this is folded on the 2.5 yards that I have, and then I am going to place again and then trace out and then place again and trace out. So this is going to be for the lower part. The hem of this dress is uneven. If you want yours to be even, you can either use a pattern paper and use the slash and spread method, or you cut your lower part longer so that after sewing you can wear it and then trim it so that it is going to be equal on the lower part. But the style inspiration, as you can see here, the hem is uneven, so that is what we are working with. So after trimming everything, I am going to set this aside. Next, I am going to be cutting facing for the back, and I'll just place this like this, and then I am going to be cutting out, and then we are also going to be doing the same for the front. We are going to be cutting a facing for the front piece as well. So there's no measurement to how your facing can be. It depends on how you want it. So I just eyeballed and then I cut, and then for the front as well, I folded my fabric this way, and then I placed it, making sure that the center front is on the folded edge here, and then I'll also go ahead to cut my facing. So this is what we are going to be using to turn the neckline of the front, and the other one we cut is what we are going to be using to turn the neckline for the back. After cutting the facing, next thing I'm going to do is to place the facing on the front piece like this, right sides facing each other, and then I am going to sew by half of an inch from one side end to the other end, okay, and then I'm going to be hemming around the facing as well. And then on the back, I am also going to place it and sew by half of an inch, and then I'm going to hem this part as well. I repeat the same for the other side of the back. So this is how it looks after joining the facing. As you can see here, I did it for all the pieces, and then after that, the next thing I'm going to do now is to join the shoulders of both front and back. So I'm going to be placing the back this way on the front, and then I'll flip the back facing the other way, and then I'm going to be sewing by half of an inch all the way to the end of the shoulder here, and then I'll repeat the same for the other side as well. And then after that, this is how it looks. The next thing I'm going to do now is to attach the sleeves to this piece, and I made a notch on the center of the sleeve, so I'll just place it this way and then sew by half of an inch all the way to the side here, and then on this other side as well, sew by half of an inch all the way to the side. I'll repeat the same for both sleeves, and then after attaching the sleeve, this is how it looks. I'll go ahead now to add the elastic because the style has elastic on the sleeve, so I'll just go ahead to hem by half of an inch this way, and then hem again by about half inch to create a casing for the elastic. So after doing that, I'll pass the elastic through this point and then stitch it down on both sides to hold it down. For the elastic here, I am using the round wrist measurement I am working with, which is 8. So I'm just going to mark 8 inches here, and then I'm going to cut it. I'll be cutting 2 pieces of this elastic because we have 2 sleeves that will be fixing it in. So after doing that, this is how it looks. As you can see here, I'll go ahead now to shape my dress. So I'll start shaping from the armhole downwards, and then I'll also shape from the armhole to the end of the sleeve. So I'll be using 1.5 inches to sew all the way down from the armhole to this point here, and then on the sleeve as well, I'll just go ahead to sew it from this point here all the way to the hem of the sleeve. So after shaping the dress, this is how it looks. I will be notching on the waist point from the inside very close to the seam so that it relaxes on the outer part. So I'll just turn this and then notch on this side here because it has a slight curve so that it relaxes on the outer part. And then after that, you're going to be working on the lower piece, and I am going to be joining these pieces together. I will join each pieces by half of an inch, and then I'll go ahead to hem one part that is going to serve as a down part of the dress, hem by half of an inch inwards twice, and then I will run a gather stitch, and then I am going to gather this piece, and then after gathering we are going to be sewing it on the lower part of the dress. So before we do that, make sure that you measure what you have on the lower part of your dress first to know how much gathers you are making on the lower part, okay, to know the length of the gathered lower part. So after measuring here, I went ahead to confirm it on the lower part that I gathered, and then I now placed it, and then I began to sew all the way. So when you get to this point here, just leave your needle inside, raise your footer, and then turn. Okay, when you get to the sharp point, that's the secret of sewing that part. So after joining, this is how it looks. I'll go ahead to lose the gathered stitch that I made earlier so that it relaxes on the outer part. Then I am also going to make notches from the inside on the V-shaped part on the dress here. I'll just use my scissors to cut this part here and then cut the other side as well this way. Okay, so you need to be careful with that. Just make sure you do it properly so that it relaxes on the outside. And then after that, I'll be attaching a zipper to this dress. I'll be making the notches on all the V-shaped parts on the dress, and then I am going to be sewing the side where I'll be adding my zip allowance. And when you're adding your zip allowance, you need to follow the curve on the waistline so it does not bulge. So I'm going to be attaching my zipper, and then I will come show you guys how it looks. After attaching the zipper, this is how it looks. I'll go ahead to sew this down with a needle and thread to hold the facing down, and this is the final look of the dress. Do not forget to make notches on your front facing so that it relaxes on the outer part. This is our beautiful dress, as you can see here. Thank you for staying till the end. Please do not forget to like the video if you found it helpful, and also drop your questions in the comments if you have questions. Bye, see you in my next one.